Now you guys are lucky because most basement floors are made of concrete and they have to be prepped to accept a wood floor. You've already got a subfloor down, so it's already prepped, and this is actually an OSB subfloor.
Now what's an OSB?
OSB stands for Oriented Strand Board. Oriented Strand Board are actually chips of wood that are glued together and compressed into a sheet. Now this is a tongue and groove sheet, and on the underside it actually has a sheet of plastic with these little spacers on it. The plastic is a vapor barrier, and the spaces actually allow air to circulate underneath the floor, drying out any condensation that should collect. Now to get started, I'm going to start with this foam pad. And we'll just push it up gently in the corner, gently against the baseboard. Don't force it at all. We don't want to crimp it up. That's good. Now I'll just tack it. Now the size of the floor that we're going to use is 7.5 inches wide and 75 inches long. There's a tongue on one side and a groove on the other. What we're going to do is put the tongue side against the baseboard. The end is a tongue and groove also, so tap it down to me, Molly. That's good. Now it's very important that each of our courses have staggered joints. Number one, it looks good, but number two, it's really stronger. So the first thing that I did is I started with a cut piece when we laid out our first row. Now when I do my second row, I'm going to use a full piece. We have to hold the board up on a slight angle. I'm going to tap it in with a dead blow hammer because I don't want to damage this edge right here. So I'm going to tap it. When I push down, and it's a nice tight joint. Now I like to use a dead blow hammer. Number one, it's plastic. Number two, it's weighted inside with BBs. The BBs give it more inertia when I hit it, and the plastic protects the wood when I hit the wood. Next piece. That's good, Eric.
Now, Tom, I noticed we're leaving a space between the baseboard and the floor. Why is that?
Right. Well, this floor will expand and contract as a unit. That means that all the expansion and contraction happens around the perimeter. So a minimum of a 1/4 inch gap around the room is all we need. To conceal this gap, we're going to use this shoe molding right here. But when we come to this casing right here, because of the profile of the casing, we can't put a piece of shoe molding on it. It won't sit flat. So what I want to do is remove a small piece of the casing so that the floor can slide under it. Now I could simply take my flush cutting handsaw and cut it out like that, but I'm going to use a multi-cutting tool that actually has a flush cutting saw blade on it. Put a piece of scrap flooring down, turn the saw on. By using this scrap piece of flooring, I know my cut will be the right height. I'll try the floor. If it's in there, good.
So these pieces are going down pretty easily.
I told you they would. But now when you get to a piece like this that's pretty irregular, that's the tricky part. First thing we needed to do is cut a piece of flooring, the length, to go to the end of that baseboard to this baseboard right here, subtracting for expansion and contraction. Next thing I want to do is I want to measure from this wall right here to this edge of the flooring. And that's 6 1/8. I have to subtract 1/4 inch for expansion and contraction. That's 5 7/8. Next thing I did is I took the board and I laid it on top of the piece of flooring that we have already down, and I lined up the edges exactly even. I then measure from this edge of the piece that we have on top, and I measured over 5 7/8, and I put a mark. I took my scribes and I set from the wall to the line that I made, and I set the width. Now I went down to the jamb and I put a line here, went down to this jamb, put another line here, connect those two dots. Take the scribes, go under the casing to the wall, draw that line there. Went in front of the baseboard, draw another line there. And I did the same thing on this end right here. And now, we're ready to make the cuts. For the long straight cut, I'm going to use my circular saw with a straight edge. And for the short cuts, we're going to use a jigsaw. All right, let's see how it fits. Good. Now we're ready to put this piece of flooring back into place. I'm going to line it up. Tap it in. Okay, now I have to get the end tongue and groove into position. I'm going to use this bar right here. This is called a pull bar. It's got a hook down here that'll go down onto the floor. Another piece right up here that I can hit with my hammer. So I'll put it in, pick up on it a little bit, and then just tap it over with my hammer. Okay, that's good. All right, now we've undercut the casing and the jamb here so we can slide our flooring into it. Now we have our last piece of flooring on this row to put in. Unfortunately, we can't get this piece in at the angle without damaging this piece of flooring right here. So what I want to do is remove this piece of flooring, slide it out of our way, take my piece of flooring that I've scribed, and put it into position. I want to tap it down. I'm going to tap it down tight against the wall. Now we'll take the piece of flooring that we just removed, put it into position. All right, now we're going to try to put it into the groove here. And now we'll tap it over.
That's good.
Okay, now with this gap right here, I'm simply going to open the door. I'm going to go inside and tap that piece of flooring out into position. You ready?
Yep.
That's it. All right, to make the transition from our bamboo floor to the concrete floor in the unfinished part of the basement, we're going to use this right here. This is a threshold. It's a solid piece of bamboo cut with a rabbet in it. Now the rabbet is so that it can sit on top of the bamboo floor. Now what I want to do is I want to place it into position, tight against the floor, and I'm going to back it off just a little bit to create that 1/4 inch gap. Once it's in position, I'm going to nail through the thick part of the threshold with 2-inch galvanized brads. It's important that I nail into the subfloor and not into the bamboo floor because I want it to move.
It's starting to look great.
Well, you know that gap I keep talking about?
Right around the perimeter.
Right. Well, now it's time to cover it. To cover it, we're going to use this piece of shoe molding right here. I've mited the end. Now what I want to do is I want to push it tight into the corner and see how it covers that gap? Now I need to nail it. I want to push down on the shoe molding, and I want to make sure that I nail the shoe molding into the baseboard, not into the floor.
So what kind of compressor is that, Tom?
Well, it's actually not a compressor. It's actually a canister of air. Holds about 3,000 psi. I can nail about 1,500 to 1,700 brads with it before I have to recharge the tank. I don't have to deal with the compressor or the noise, and I don't have to drag around those cords. Well, I think it looks really good.
I think it looks incredible. In fact, I think it's almost too nice for a playroom.
Uh-oh.
Thanks, Tom. You've been a great help.